Part 3. What about the so-called exception clauses? But what about, some ask. Matthew 5:31. It was said, whoever sends his wife away, divorces, let him give her a certificate of divorce. Verse 32, but I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Let's dissect this verse and see what Yeshua was saying. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery. And let's take this phrase, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Now for sure there's no exceptions on that phrase. Whoever marries a divorced woman indeed commits adultery. No exception there. Why? She's absorbing that second, third, etc. Semen within her body from second, third, etc. husband. And then let's remove the so-called exception. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, and here it is, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery. Question. How does he make her commit adultery? What do women do when they're divorced? What do men do when they've been divorced? They go out and get remarried. But if she was already adulterated, but I say unto you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery. Well, question. If she was already adulterated through unchastity prior to that time that she married this man, is he making her commit adulteration? No, she was already adulterated. And adulteration means to add a foreign substance to, i.e., in this case, another man's seminal emission. It is not an exception clause. Rather, it's an explanation clause. That is, if she hasn't already been adulterated, you're going to make her husband become adulterated when you divorce her. Well, hey, if she has been unchaste, can I still divorce her? No, we'll see the answer to that in Matthew chapter 19. And in Matthew 19, here's Yeshua. And he's down in Judea beyond on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And he's engaged in a healing session there one day. And these Pharisees come down from Jerusalem, and they're loaded for him. They've got this question, and you know what it is. Verse 1, here's the setting. When Jesus, or Yeshua, had finished these words, he departed from Galilee and came into the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Some Pharisees came to Jesus, testing him and asking, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Just give us any grounds, any reason at all. And what did they do? Deuteronomy 6, they tested the Most High himself. You shall not put Yahweh your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. And what was his answer? He answered and said, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? He's referring back here to Genesis 2. And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Quoting Genesis 2:24. So they're no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God, or Yahweh, has joined together, let no man separate. Period. Question. What is his answer to the question of the Pharisees who tested him? Their question, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason at all? No grounds whatsoever did he give. No reasons. To divorce is to break Yahweh's Torah, his teaching of Genesis 2:24. And question, would his answer be any different if you ask for a reason, or a cause, for grounds? And from the beginning, but from the beginning of creation, Yahweh made them male and female. Question, does your God change? But what about, you ask? Well, let's look at the what about, the clause that follows. And it has to do with Moses. Matthew 19, verse 7. They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give her certificate of divorce and send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been this way, and I submit, and it's still not that way." Question: do hard-hearted people inherit the kingdom? Let's look at this. Permitted you to divorce. Their question. They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away?" And the King James Version of Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 2 reads like this: "When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write a bill of divorcement and give it into her hand and send her out of his house, and when she is departed out of his house, she may go and become another man's wife." Sounds like that's clear grounds. Hey, he is commanded to write her a certificate of divorcement, and she may go and become another man's wife. Guess what? The words "let him" and "may go," they're not in Hebrew. Matthew 19:9, "And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality, and marries another woman commits adultery." Well, let's again dissect this verse. "And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her," Mark 10 adds, "against the marriage." Question: who is bringing the adulteration into the marriage? If he divorces his wife and marries another, he is bringing it into it, the husband. However, if she had already adulterated the marriage, you see what he's saying? Then he is not the one who commits the adulteration of the marriage. She was. "And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery," i.e. adulteration of the marriage. So, if she committed the adulteration, do you divorce her or do you forgive? Well, let's look at where this passage is. It's immediately following Matthew 18, 32 through 35. "Then his Lord, having summoned him, says, Thou evil bondsman, I forgave thee all that debt, because thou besought me. Was it not necessary for thee also to be merciful to thy fellow bondman, as I was also merciful to thee? And having become angry, his Lord delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all that was due him. So also my heavenly Father will do to you, if you do not forgive each man his brother," and I might add, his spouse, that's clear, "from your hearts their trespasses." And then look what follows the Matthew 19 passage. "Then children were brought to him, so that he would lay his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus," or Yeshua, "said, Allow the children, and do not forbid them to come to me, for of such kind is the kingdom of heaven. And having laid his hands on them, he departed from there." Children, little children, they can be playing together, getting in a big fight. 5 minutes later, they're the best of friends, i.e. they forgive. And this passage on the hard heart of divorce and remarriage is stuck right between two passages having to do with forgiveness. We ought to get the point. And this reading lines up with Mark 10 and Luke 16. Mark 10 is the same scenario, and there is no exception clause. Why? That's discussed in that passage. Why? Because there is none. And Luke 1. Luke writes and says, "Inasmuch as many have undertaken to compile an account of the things accomplished among us, it seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught." Now, probably he wasn't taught about everything, but the things he had been taught, Luke is writing to him so he would know the exact truth on it. And what did he have to say about the divorce and remarriage issue? That's in Luke 16:18. "Everyone," quoting Yeshua here, "everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery," i.e. adulteration of the marriage, when that extra semen comes in from another source. "And he who marries one who is divorced from a husband commits adultery," i.e. adulteration of the marriage. No exception clause. Why? There is none. Well, next we'll look at part 4 and the Apostle Paul. Some say he gave grounds or exceptions for divorce and remarriage.